Do you think it was acceptable for Suella Braverman to try and get a private speed awareness course? The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, is to consult his ethics advisor later about Suella Braverman's handling of a speeding offence. The Home Secretary is under scrutiny not over the speeding offence itself, but over whether she acted properly in trying to arrange a private one-to-one course. The speeding offence took place last summer, and Suella Braverman later accepted 3 points on her licence and a fine. The government source has denied her actions breached the rules on the conduct of ministers, while a former senior civil servant, Sir Philip Rycroft, disagrees.
The code is very clear. Ministers must ensure that no conflict arises or appears to arise between their public duties and their private interests. Even asking the question of a civil servant as to how she might go on one of these courses puts them in an impossible position.
The speeding offence took place last summer, and Suella Braverman later accepted those 3 points on her licence and a fine. Initially, she was offered the choice of either the fine and points or a speed awareness course. Well, a government source has said the Home Secretary had been concerned about her insurance premiums and favoured doing a course. She asked civil servants about arranging a course for just her, citing security concerns about doing one as part of a group. But she was told it wasn't a matter for the civil service. Well, Labour and the Liberal Democrats have said involving the civil servants in a private matter would have been a breach of the ministerial code. The political commentator Katie Ball says Suella Braverman's approach seems to have changed when she changed jobs from Attorney General to Home Secretary.
Sources close to the Home Secretary say that the speeding fine dates back to when she was Attorney General. At that point, she was willing to go on this group course, and when she was appointed Home Secretary, there were questions about what this meant for her role given security. So if there is an investigation, these will be all the things that are being looked at.
The lawyer Nick Freeman, also known as Mr. Loophole, says the request for a private speed awareness course was reasonable. He'll be joining me on the programme in just a second to explain why. But do you think it was acceptable for Suella Braverman to try and get a private speed awareness course? Here's the number if you want to get involved. Have your say on 08081 008800. That's 08081 008800. You can text on 81333. Start your text with 3CR. Texts are charged at standard network rate. Email me here at the BBC JVS show at bbc.co.uk, and you can WhatsApp me with your thoughts 08000 321 333. Just start that message with 3CR. Do you think it was acceptable for Suella Braverman to try and get a private speed awareness course?
The JVS show.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
So Nick Freeman is a lawyer known to all of us as Mr. Loophole, and I'm pleased to say he joins us now. Morning, Nick.
Morning, Jonathan.
Why do you think it was acceptable then for Suella Braverman to try and get a private speed awareness course?
Well, it's perfectly lawful to make the request. There's nothing unlawful about it. If you don't ask, you don't get. I have several clients who have had a one-to-one course, basically because their presence would cause a huge distraction. The purpose of these courses is to make us better drivers, safer drivers, improve road safety. And so you don't want somebody who's on the course, then everyone's going to be, all the other attendees are going to look at that person, all that such and such, da-di-da-di-da. It's a huge distraction. So we look at the purpose of the course, and we look at the presence of those who are in attendance. And I'm not suggesting in her case it was an appropriate request, but there was certainly nothing unlawful about it, and it might have been a request that was acceded to. What I think she should have done, I think there's two things she should have done. First of all, I think when she was Attorney General, she'd have come straight out and said, I've been caught speeding, I'm thoroughly ashamed, I'm sorry, and I'm going to do one of these courses to make me a better and safer driver. I think that would have been a much better way of dealing with it. And I think she should have consulted a lawyer, and the lawyer would have made the approach. That, of course, would then be bound by confidentiality and privilege, and nobody will be talking about it now.
So is that how it works then? Because I went on this morning to Hertfordshire County Council's website just to have a look and just to see if for example, if I was caught speeding and I was given the opportunity of having a one of these speed awareness courses, if I could set up my own one-to-one, and I couldn't find any way of being able to organise that.
Yeah, you wouldn't.
So how do you?
By contacting the course provider or them contacting you. I've actually been contacted by the course provider with a particular client who actually made the suggestion to us because that person's presence would have just been a ridiculous distraction. We were amenable to it, and I have on several occasions contacted the course provider and said, look, I'm representing such and such. Would you be happy to provide a one-to-one? Yes, we would.
Right. And how much does that cost then compared to the normal 90 quid?
No extra cost.
So for 90 quid, you can get a one-to-one course if you're...
Jonathan, it's conveying the wrong message. If you are somebody whose very presence would pose a ridiculous distraction that would really render the course useless, then it happens. There are not that many people that really applies to. We're talking about world-famous celebrities here. As far as politicians are concerned, I don't think they fall into that category. The security matter, I don't really understand that, but obviously I've not had her instructions. I have my own personal views about whether or not attending a Zoom call poses any risk to security, particularly as I understand that she'd asked for a name to be redacted, which is slightly ridiculous because obviously she's instantly recognisable. All I'm saying is it's not unlawful, and she's entitled to make the request, as are you and I. The vast majority of drivers in this country have actually attended courses. The idea is not to shame you by attending a course, it's to make them better and safer drivers. And you just don't want that distraction. No one wants it. The course provider doesn't want it. So you won't find it on a website. It's probably something that isn't really known about, but lawyers who specialize in this area should know about it because, as I say, I've used it and I've actually been contacted by course providers on one occasion and asked if this particular person would be happy to do a one-to-one.
But of course, it's also supposed to be a punishment, isn't it? And isn't there something a little bit embarrassing, a little bit humiliating about the whole idea of being at this course with other people who've all broken the same law as you, and then you have to have your little group session and all those kinds of things that go on at a speed awareness course. I mean, it's supposed to be a punishment. If you try and pull a few strings to turn it from a punishment that's a bit embarrassing into a very private one-on-one meeting, isn't that you trying to use your influence to get a lighter sentence than other people?
I don't see it that way, Jonathan. I think it's a matter of perspective. I think the principal reason behind the course is actually to avoid a financial penalty, and more particularly to avoid endorsement and a higher insurance premium. That's the real purpose. You avoid that, and you actually are educated in stuff that many of us who did our driving test a long time ago has actually forgotten. So it's a constructive educational purpose. I don't think the idea of the course is to shame you or humiliate you, that there is a punishment, a punitive aspect in the sense that you have to give up several hours of your time and you have to pay for the course. But I think as far as trying to be shamed by attending or feeling humiliated, I don't personally share that view, but obviously that's the view some of your listeners may feel is appropriate. I don't believe so. I think we should look at these courses as helping us to become better drivers. They serve a very useful role.
Well, I just think a lot of my listeners will have done speed awareness courses and they will have gone through that process. That is a group process, and a lot of it as a group, it's all about, listening to other people's views and other people's experiences and challenging maybe your own ideas on speeding with other people who are on that group. And they may look at Suella Braverman and just think, well, she was just trying to pull some strings to have her own private one-to-one session because then it was going to be easier, it was going to be quicker, it wasn't going to be embarrassing in the same way that it would be for most other people. It's one rule for her and another for everyone else.
Well, that's not true because anybody can ask the question. She asked the question and she was rebuffed, and in my view, she was rightly rebuffed. I can't see any real basis for her to have a one-on-one. But there's no harm in asking the question. And I agree with you to the extent that most people don't do this, and it's not open to most people. It's open to a tiny, tiny, tiny minority of people. So most people...
And she thought herself as well.
She felt that she fell into that category, and clearly she doesn't. But if I say to you, if I just turn it around and say, look, if you have someone on the course who has worldwide recognition, and that proves a distraction to everyone, so the sense that people are concentrating on that particular person rather than the very useful information that the course provides, does that make the course of less impact or more impact? Does it not defeat the whole object of the purpose? Does it not actually make sense to say, look, in this particular rare instance, we rather remove this particular person because we want our people, the people who are attending, who have paid money to attend, to learn as much as possible. And that is going to be diluted. It's going to be diminished by the presence of this person. That's going to be too much of a distraction.
But then, as you say, I mean, surely you're talking about people like, if David Beckham or someone...
I'm not going to mention any names.
No, but somebody, and I know you have represented David Beckham. I mean, he's a very, very famous person, isn't he? I mean, if somebody like him was on the course, then absolutely you could understand that he would be, everyone would be nudging one another and saying, oh, look, David Beckham's on our speed awareness course. But with Suella Braverman... I agree. What I'm saying is that she's not done anything wrong by asking the question. It may give you. But she didn't ask a lawyer, did she? She didn't come to you. She asked a civil servant and said, "How do I get a private one-on-one course?"
And that raises the whole issue as to whether or not she's breached the ministerial code. And in my view, if you get caught speeding, that is a private, personal matter, and you don't use civil servants who are funded by the taxpayer to assist you with that dilemma. It's got nothing to do with your public life. It's to do with your private life, which may well impact on your public life, but you need to finance that yourself. You need to pay for it yourself, and the code is quite clear. But obviously, people much better qualified than me are going to look at that and decide whether or not there's a breach. And I don't know exactly what she said, what she asked, and it may have been an in-passing comment. We don't know. So I think it'd be wrong to us to make to prejudge that until that evidence has been heard and evaluated. But if she came to me, and said, "Look, can you get me on the course?" I'd have said, absolutely. If you want me to ask, I will, but I don't think there's a possibility of it being acceded to. And my advice will be, the moment you get done, you hold your hands up and say, "Look, I've been done for speeding. I'm going to do a course." And I think she'd have won political plaudits for that. Instead, this has turned very sour and nasty and may have some very serious ramifications for her.
Good to talk to you, Nick, as always. Thank you so much for your time. Nick Freeman is a lawyer known as Mr. Loophole. So what do you think?